Thank you all for coming. Welcome. This is a Medicare 101 talk. So we're going to cover a range of things which would include, for those of you who aren't on Medicare yet, but you're coming up on it, and for those of you who are on Medicare. Any show of hands of people that aren't on Medicare yet? Good. Good. Okay, so with that, we shall go ahead. Whoops. I'm going to give you what I will sort of call 3 advertisements at the beginning. What is Shine? I'm a Shine counselor. I'm a volunteer. I volunteer through HESCO, and I work out of the Council on Aging here. If you would like to set up an appointment, if you see Rochelle, she keeps my schedule, and I'll meet with you here. I also volunteer at the HESCO line on Fridays, and I take phone calls from any of the towns in our area. We have the equivalent of like a college course education in Medicare and some things on Mass Health. We also have to pass a test and mentor with senior counselors before they cut us loose. And then yearly, we have a monthly meeting. We upgrade on some topics. And we have to pass a test annually. What we do here in Massachusetts is done in every state, but it might not be called Shine. So if you have a relative or friend in another state, let them know that the same function exists where they live. They should start with their senior center and get referred to the counselor in their area. Marketing violations. Nobody is allowed to contact you if you don't already have a relationship. So in other words, if you're on Medicare, my Part D drug plan can contact me, for clarification of something. My Medigap, my Medicare Advantage can contact me. Nobody else can be cold calling you and saying they're from Medicare. Report that. Now I'm going to flip it around and say, when you're watching TV and you see an 800 number come up on the screen, be careful, because that would open the door and allow them to be contacting you in the future. So buyer beware. Now my third comment is Part D drug plans. For calendar 2021, there are 3 fewer drug plans in Norfolk County than there were in 23. Did I say 2021? I meant to say 2024. Drug plans have a lot of moving parts to them, and you have some moving parts, meaning you may be taking more medications and different medications than you were taking when you just came out and went on Medicare. I strongly advise everybody to review your drug plans this year to make sure you're not on the wrong plan with fewer plans out there. Because once we get beyond, for those of you who are on Medicare, once we get beyond December 7th, you're locked. There's no special enrollment period to unlock you for the most part. So be looking in your mailbox. Have people received any paperwork from their existing plans? I know I have. So if you don't already have it, make sure you're opening your paper mail, because they have to contact you if they're mapping you to something else and what the costs are and all. So pay attention, at least for a few weeks in the year. Now I'll go into my talk around Medicare in the other comments up on the slide. What I want to do is I want you to leave here today with some idea of what it might cost you, particularly if you're not on Medicare today and you intend to go on it in a few months, so you have some idea what you might be getting into. Okay, Medicare is different parts. If you're coming from an employer group plan, your first response should be, oh my gosh, is this more complex? And everybody would agree with you. There are so many parts. 3 different parts. Part A is the hospital insurance. Part B is the medical insurance. That means the doctors and the tests. Part D is prescription coverage. You have to have prescription coverage within 2 months after you leave your group insurance plan, or you'll be penalized. You're going to go to Social Security for Parts A and B. Everybody else you deal with any kind of supplemental insurance, you're dealing directly with the insurance company. So who is eligible for Medicare? You probably generally know this information already. 65 years old, US citizen or lawfully permitted to be here for 5 years. Some people can get on it earlier, people with SSDI for 2 years, so they can be less than 65. And in these two cases, end-stage renal disease and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And unfortunately, I've taken calls from 2 of these kind of people who are in their 50s or more, their spouses. Most people are going to be eligible for premium-free Part A. You have to have worked for 10 years and been paying Medicare tax. Comes out of the employer, and I think it comes out of your paycheck as well. It can either be based on your work history or your spouse's. So if somebody's a stay-at-home mom, they either were married for 10 years or are still married, they would qualify for premium-free Part A as well. And this is a piece of advice I want to give everyone. Sometimes people say, oh, Social Security age and Medicare age, the same thing. No, they're not. Social Security, for those of you who are still working, I think full Social Security to get 100% of your check today is 66 and 8 months, going to 67 years. Medicare age is still 65. It hasn't changed, and there are no plans to change. So how do you enroll in Medicare? You go to Social Security for Parts A and B. My advice for those of you who haven't retired yet is when you decide you're going to retire, I would step up to this 2 to 3 months early at least, because I think since the pandemic, there are a lot of rookies in their positions. I think it's taken a little bit longer than it used to take. You can do it in one of 3 ways. You can go to the office, you can do it over the phone, they'll call you back, they'll have preset an appointment, or you can do it online at ssa.gov. If you're already receiving Social Security, you probably will get automatically enrolled in Parts A and B. That might be for somebody who is on disability, but otherwise, it's up to you. When you're at work, they hound you to re-up for your benefits. When you're coming to retire, it's on your back. You can't claim the dog ate your homework. It didn't work when you were 14. It doesn't work now. So I'm going to go over certain ones of these different enrollment periods. That's yet another thing that makes Medicare so complicated. There are various enrollment periods. One is the initial enrollment period, and I've got a slide on that. That's when you turn 65. Special enrollment period, I'm going to mostly go over people that are coming out of work and when you have to enroll by. And the general enrollment period is for somebody that missed it altogether. I got a slide on that too. If you already have Medicare, I say mostly focus on, that's why I think most of you are here. The open enrollment period is October 15th to December 7th. For many of us in this room, that's when you make your change, and your change become effective January 1st. There also is an open enrollment period for Medicare Advantage people. They can, if you're on Medicare Advantage, you can change to a different Medicare Advantage plans in the first 3 months of next year. And I want to stop telling you anything more because people start glossing over by this point. You know, you can only take so many periods. The other one's The SEP, for certain circumstances, that might be if you move, somebody might move into Massachusetts and join their children and grandchildren. That would open up an enrollment period for you as well. My hypothetical individual was born on the 15th of July. Date means nothing, it's only the month. Everything around Social Security is full month, or not Social Security, Medicare, I mean. So the 3 months before you turn 65, April, May, and June, you sign up for Medicare, you would be on Medicare on July 1. If you sign up either the month of your birth or the 3 months after, it's just offset by 1 month. The reason that I put the Bennies Act up here, if any of you are sitting on old information or you talk to somebody that tells you their historical perspective, the Bennies Act came into play in 2023, and a lot of people still are probably not familiar with it. Same thing is true on the general enrollment period. You can enroll January through March, and because of the Bennies Act, you're offset by 1 month, and that's when you would be on Medicare. What about if you're working past the age of 65? Well, that's very common. I work past the age of 65. If you're on a group plan, and there must be more than 20 people, you don't have to do anything, but you've got to be an active employee. It's not COBRA, it's not a retiree plan. You have to be a current employee. You pass the age, so you hit 65, you did nothing. You're 66 now, you figure it's time to retire. You've got a special enrollment period of up to 8 months to get on Medicare from that time. You also are going to have to submit a form. I think I have it on another slide, but it's a very common thing. Social Security sees it a lot. That's very common. If there are less than 20 or fewer employees, in theory, you've got to go on Medicare at 65. I'm thinking like a small dental office or something like that. I would say, when in doubt, talk to whoever administers the benefits there and ask them. But otherwise, you should be going on Medicare at 65, and you could still keep their group plan for your incremental insurance. Going back to that special enrollment period, if you're the spouse of somebody who's on a group plan, again, you don't have to do anything. At 65, you're covered on that plan. When the person goes to retire, you are entitled to the same 8 months to enroll in Medicare, which, by the way, I would never encourage that. When you figure it's time to retire, plan it out and be getting on Medicare about the time that you're getting off of your group plan. Oh, this was the form I was referring to, the CMS form. That's referred to as group coverage. So for the person who's working, they would have to submit, assuming you're both over 65 now, they would have to submit 2 of those forms to their employer and get the employer to sign off on it that, person A and person B were covered. They're validating it, and you would submit that to Social Security when you sign up for A and B, or shortly thereafter. That avoids getting a penalty. Avoid penalties, have a plan. The penalty for every year you missed on Part B, it's 10% of whatever Part B is. So that number is going to change every year. It would be whatever Part B's premium is, which this year is $165 or $164.90. We don't know what the number's going to be for 2024. It should be imminently that they're going to announce that. There's also, beyond 2 months of not being on a drug plan, you get penalized 1% for every month you're not covered. The base for 2023 was 3306. So again, keep in mind, these, by the way, these are penalties for life. So the 33 would be 33 cents a month for every month you were late. And of course, as that goes up next year and the year after, that number would change as well. So to summarize, have a plan and carry it out. Don't get caught being penalized. Unfortunately, I talk to too many people who are penalized. So what are the costs? If you're married, one thing you need to remember, you were probably on a group plan and you all had the same insurance. Everything is individual in Medicare, and if two spouses don't have the same health level, you probably don't belong, certainly on the same drug plan, if not the same health insurance plan otherwise. So start to break that mindset, or be aware that you can break that mindset. You don't have to be on the same thing. All right, there's an awful lot here. First of all, this is 2023 slide. The numbers aren't available yet. Part A hospital deductible is $1,600 per benefit period. What that means, that's a 60-day window. That's not an annual charge. If you wound up in the hospital twice, it would be $1,600 times 2 if they were, months apart. Beyond the first 60 days, if you're in the hospital for a fair amount of time, you're going to have incremental costs for each individual day that you're in there. Similar thing, there's incremental costs if you go into a skilled nursing facility to recover. People get insurance to cover that. Part B this year is $164.90, call it $165. If you are a high earner, it's something called IRMA. You may have to pay a premium for B and D, as in drug. And there is a form for that, and I'll speak to that again in some later slides. The deductible is $226, and after that, you would pay 20% of anything else. Medicare covers 80%. The long and the short of it is there's no cap on your out-of-pocket costs with just regular Medicare A and B, so people buy incremental insurance. And I mentioned on the last slide, Part D, you go directly to the insurance company to get insurance coverage. And this is on Medicare.gov is one way to find a plan that is good for you. Or I can give you a hand. So the additional coverage that people get beyond A and B, and of course they have to have drugs somewhere, would be something called a Medigap plan or Medicare supplement plan. A Medicare Advantage plan, which is called Part C, and that also covers your drugs. A prescription drug plan if you have no drug coverage, or for any of you who may have access to a retiree plan or VA benefits, we always encourage people to maintain those relationships. Those are usually better deals than what you wind up in the open market with. And a lot of times, if you get off your retiree plan, you can't get back on it. So think long and hard before you pull the plug on that. So coming back, the heavy blue line, everybody gets on A and B, and you do that at Social Security. Additionally, people either go a Medigap plan and a separate drug plan, or they go a Medicare Advantage plan, which covers drugs. And if I had enough room on the slide, I'd have a third column. Your retiree health plan, like with GIC, would be the equal to like a Medicare Advantage plan. That would be your supplemental insurance. You can't mix and match. When you do things, if you sign up for something, you automatically unenroll yourself from whatever you were on. And I just had my first experience this year. I talked to the gentleman's wife. The guy signed up for a Medicare Advantage plan. I don't know what he was trying to achieve because I didn't talk to him. But he found out in May or so when he went out to see his doctor for whatever his conditions were, he was no longer on the Medigap plan, and his doctor didn't accept the Medicare Advantage plan he went to. So don't do that. So Medigap plans, as I look, there were a few show of hands. Is there anybody who hasn't signed up for Medicare yet that was born in 54 or earlier? If the answer to that question is yes, you can get on Supplement 1A, which is also known as bronze. Otherwise, most of you are only eligible for Supplement 1A, which is also known as sapphire or core. The benefit of a Medigap plan is you can go to any doctor, so you can self-direct your care. As long as the doctor accepts Medicare and new patients, they should accept you as a client. And again, Part D is not covered, so you have to get a Part D plan. There are a fixed number of people that write Medigap plans here in Massachusetts, and I'll come back to the slide. Their names you know, there may be a couple that you don't know, but they're bigger insurance companies. Again, I can make this available to you, gentlemen. So I already went through, the first column here is, so we're looking at A and B. This is a high-level view of Medicare. So we talked about deductibles of A and their ongoing costs if you were in the hospital for a long time. Skilled nursing facility, there's costs if you're in there for a long time. And then we talked about the one-time annual deductible for B, and you'd pay 20% beyond that. So what I want you to focus on is the second column, which is core. What core covers, it doesn't cover the deductible, but it will cover the extra days. So to make that in English, if you wound in the hospital a couple of times, months apart, you'd be on the hook for 1,600 times 2 if you were on core. If I jump down to Part B, you still pay the first $226 for the doctors and the tests, and the insurance company picks up everything from that point on. I would say people that may want to consider core might be people, younger retirees that are pretty healthy and are willing to self-insure to a degree. Then we go over to Supplement 1A. So 1A does take care of the Part A deductible, and Part B is the same, meaning you pay the annual deductible and then they pick up everything from there. The difference, the average difference in cost between these two plans is this winds up being $140, $150 for core. This is closer to $200 for Supplement 1A, and these are based on 2024 prices now. And bronze is not available to most of you unless you're already on it, if you're old enough. But the one thing that I point out to people is the difference between 1A and 1. The only difference is bronze picks up the $226 deductible, and by the way, these are 2023 prices. This number might change a bit. But it costs you probably $500 to save $226. I just make people aware of that as I talk to them. I personally would prefer to have money in the bank and be willing to take on the first $226, but of course it's your decision. Any questions on this? I realize I'm throwing a lot at you quickly. Are you all glazed over? And that's okay too. Yes. Was there one? No? Medicare Advantage plans. Every every company or every insurance company offers multiple Medicare Advantage plans, from zero cost to some cost to a more expensive one. It's very much like when I was working. We always co-paid everything as we went. You went to see your primary care, you had some payment, you went to a specialist, you had a bigger payment, etc. So the model would be very much like most group insurance plans are. There are various enrollment periods, and I guess what I'm going to do is go to a slide. This is my attempt at a composite, just to give you an idea. And by the way, I saw somebody here. I got the same piece of literature yesterday from Blue Cross Blue Shield. If you want to look at these plans, it's somewhere in my bag. If you want to look at these plans, go into their websites. They really do a nice job of it. You can do, a few different plans and go down their table of what the copays are at different points and what the maximum out-of-pocket cost is. I'll walk you through this one, and this is just a composite. It's not a real plan. Everybody's got a zero-cost plan. HMO means you got to go within their network. Usually for the zero cost, the out-of-pocket expense, the cap, the maximum you would pay, is quite a bit higher, probably $7,500 plus or minus. You see some copays. I just put in a few. Primary care physician might be $10, a specialist $45, and they have many more things on their website, like going to physical therapy, getting an MRI, et cetera, et cetera. You start to pay something. There's usually a mid-price plan, and you basically, one of the things I look at is you're buying down your maximum out of pocket, and it's something like half or less. So $3,500 is the example I used here, and you only see a few dollars off. The specialist, you get to some more expensive things like an MRI, it might be $75 less, et cetera. You get to a plan north of $100, the cap stays the same, but all of the copays decline. I come down to a PPO, and they'll split things. In network, the cap might be what it is for an HMO, but if you go out of network, the number is higher, usually quite a bit higher. And when it comes to the copays at the out-of-network, those are usually appreciably higher. I don't know if anybody has questions on this. I almost wonder why you might choose a plan like this. Why not just go? If you're north of 100 and you're paying a pretty good amount of money if you're out-of-network, why wouldn't you maybe just go to a Sapphire plan? Just my 2 cents. Always check with your doctors. I assume the doctors you have, you might want to maintain your relationship with. Before you make your final decision on what plan to go into, make sure they're going to accept the plan that you're thinking of, or find out what they will accept so you don't have to interrupt that relationship. Hospitals are another thing I think you certainly would want to consider. Here are some pros and cons. Higher monthly cost, but no sharing, pay as you go. You're free to choose who you want. You may be restricted with HMOs and need referrals. The Medicare Advantage plans may have some other bells and whistles which aren't going to be covered in a Medigap plan, etc. Oh, by the way, you're not covered. Medicare is a domestic plan. You're not covered out of the country. Before you're going to go on a trip, make sure you check with your company. It may be that you do automatically have a rider that would cover you for international travel. If not, consider purchasing one or get travel insurance. Unfortunately, I had a lady call me up one time that was looking to see if she could get some help in her appeal with Medicare, but I knew she wasn't covered. And if you're taking an international trip and you're spending big bucks a day between air travel, hotel, meals, et cetera, it's a shame not to have spent a couple $100 more perhaps for travel insurance. It's a good thing to have. Travel insurance is more than if you get sick and you can't make the trip or your flight gets canceled. It's health insurance as well. Part D, prescription drugs. So I've handed out, if anybody came in later, I'd be glad to do your drug plan. I've got some up here. You can pick one up before you leave. Drug plans change constantly. I mentioned, I think, on the first slide. Since I found an old slide, in 2022, there were 6 fewer drug plans. There's 3 fewer now, so that's 9. And I haven't kept track of everything. There's 21 drug plans in Norfolk County. So the drug plan pieces are moving constantly. What they cover and what tier they cover, or what tier they claim the drug is in, all of those things can move. Not to mention, you might be taking more in different drugs. You shouldn't be leaving your drug plan on automatic pilot. You should review them. And I guess my conclusion on that is, I may have already covered a bunch of this. It's your money. So I pretty much covered that. There's a lot of things in motion. The formulary changes. Not every plan has the same drug in the same tier. In more expensive tiers have bigger copays. There's also, pay attention to this, when you have you get the information when you sign up for something, and you can see what is a preferred pharmacy when you look at Medicare.gov. If you're not using their preferred pharmacy, your copay is always going to be higher. So again, if that's worth it to you, fine. But if you're not paying attention and paying more, something you should be aware of. It's easy to do a drug plan. As a matter of fact, I did a presentation about a month ago, and it's on Millis Community Media. Okay, I got the name right. And it's only been up there for about a month, and apparently it has been viewed. So if you want, if you do any shopping online or do almost anything, you can figure this out. It's quite straightforward. You could view that to get some ideas if you get stuck. If not, get a hold of me or ask me to run your drug plan for you. I'd be glad to do it. And again, it's in Medicare.gov. So let me come through some of what I'm referring to as the tips. Before you do international travel, check with your insurance company and make sure that you're covered. If not, buy some coverage. And buying coverage can be one of two things generally. It's either you get a rider on your insurance or you get travel insurance for the duration of your trip. High earners may have to pay more for Part B as in boy and D as in drugs. If you make, based on calendar 2023, if you're single and make your Maggie, your adjusted gross income plus tax-free interest on bonds, if you make more than 97 as single or 194 as a couple, you may be in a penalty situation. Not a penalty, but you may be in a premium situation. And it's referred to as IRMA. You can file an appeal. So as you go forward, your income is dropping by your wages going to zero. I would suggest you get a letter for your company on letterhead. They'll know what to do when you approach them. It would have your name on it, your social security number, your date of retirement, and signed by somebody in authority like the manager of benefits or something of that nature. And hold on to that for a couple of years. Because I had just started to say this. Very shortly, anybody on Medicare is going to get a letter from Social Security that says what we're going to be paying for next year based on changes in cost of living and or premium on Part B, et cetera. And what year income is that based on? Well, it's based on 2022 because we haven't finished 2023 yet. So if any of you retires in the middle of the summer, they're still going to be looking back at 2022, even though you've already filed 2023 by next summer. we all get measured on the same, by using the same yardstick. That's why you may have to hold on to that letter for a couple of years and appeal twice, assuming you fall into that. The plans are individual. Both spouses do not need to be on the same plan or the same drug plan. And remember, you're only making a decision for the year you're in. I encourage everybody to make an informed decision, but don't go crazy, because you can change next year if you felt like you didn't make the best decision. I suggest everybody have a Medicare.gov account and an SSA.gov account, and be willing to sign up for emails, because the emails are very practical. Like some of these fraud cases and all, there's always people out there with new schemes, and they particularly come after seniors. You see the TV commercial? I encourage you not to call. Talk to me first, and then you can call them. Review your Part D plan regularly. Given the fact that there seem to be a lot of people on the learning curve at Social Security and some of these other agencies since the pandemic, when you're going to go to retire, get to Social Security 2 to 3 months earlier, because it's been a little bit slow based on experiences of some of the people that I've been talking to. Insurance company, there's no big deal. Insurance companies are in the business to sign you up for insurance, but they need to see when your Part B is going to start before they can make your, whatever it is, your Part D or Medigap or Medicare Advantage active. If you're not on Medicare, you're not part of the open enrollment period. So you're not stuck in this October 15th to December 7th. You're on your own schedule, and I think I explained some of that to you folks. So don't get all flustered. You've only got until December 7th. If you're still working, that's not you. That's only for people that are already on it. This is our time to change if we want to. If you're struggling with health expenses, make an appointment with me. I can screen you to see if you qualify for any assistance. In this, I've never invoked this to anyone yet, with anyone yet. The Bennies Act, which I referred to, began last year, or the year we're in. It's referred to as the Benefit Enrollment Notification and Eligibility Simplification Statute, I guess. Rolls right off your tongue. If you're somebody, or you know somebody who has received a transplant, some drugs are on Part B. B as in boy. Most of the drugs we think about were on Part D. They're self-administered. Something like an immunosuppressive drug would be under Part B, and they can sign up for some additional coverage if they're that kind of individual that will be taking this for the rest of their life, an anti-rejection drug. And that is the end. So I think you can all sit here. But I thank you all for coming here. And this will be posted soon on Millis Community Media. If you have a friend or neighbor, that's where you can look to see this presentation. Thank you.